From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Empowering Seniors.
Welcome to the Empowering Seniors television program. I'm your host, Katherine Ambrose. We often talk about how to get loved ones from here to there, downsizing, all types of lifestyle topics. Today we're talking about something really important, and that's medical transport. We have flying angels here with us today. Bob Batchelor from Philadelphia has come here to Kansas to share this important transportation opportunity for you. Bob, thank you so much for being on.
Katherine, thank you very much for having me and allowing me to talk about what we do at Flying Angels.
I'm just so excited. You have props and everything. So tell us what Flying Angels does.
So what we do at Flying Angels is we have nurses and doctors who accompany people on the regular commercial airlines, Delta, American, United, around the country. So somebody who needs medical needs and needs to get long distances, rather than flying on an expensive air ambulance, can fly on a regularly scheduled commercial airline with a flight nurse sitting right next to them. Our service is bedside to bedside. So somebody can tell us, hey, my mom is in Wichita, Kansas, and she's at her home, and we want them moved to a senior living facility in Orlando, Florida, or anywhere else in the country. And we pretty much do everything, bedside to bedside. We will go pick up mom at her facility, take her to the airport, fly with her first class, get her in Orlando, and then take her where she needs to go.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Because as people have more medical needs, cognitive needs, it's important to have an advocate. So oftentimes you might have your loved one live closer to you.
Yes.
And how to get them there could be really difficult. It could be difficult to get great grandma on a car ride all the way across, or what could be some of the hazards of family taking grandma that maybe has some fragile conditions on a regular flight on their own?
Well, one of the considerations that they need to take in place is if a layperson is trying to take somebody who is either physically impaired or cognitively impaired on a commercial airline, they may not know all the intricacies of air travel. They may not be familiar with navigating airports, and they may not be aware of the physical limitations that the person might have and how they're going to respond to strange, unusual situations. We have nurses who are seasoned professionals, critical care trained flight nurses who are experienced in traveling around the country and around the world, who have the resources and the equipment to deal with medical emergencies and are able to get that person safely from point A to point B.
So this is an alternative to like an air ambulance. Do you fly people all over the world? Also,
we fly people globally. We often help in repatriation of American citizens who get injured overseas. We repatriate foreign nationals to their home country if they wind up getting into the healthcare system and say they're undocumented and need to get back to their home country, be that China, be that Africa, be that South America, anywhere in the world that a commercial airline flies, we can transport somebody with the care of a critical care trained registered flight nurse.
Because people might think, oh, it's no big deal, 3-hour flight, we'll have the neighbor go with grandma, or we'll put grandma on by herself, or little sister will go with her. But at certain points with dementia or medical care, that might not be a great idea. What are some of the things that happen to people when they do these kind of transports on their own?
Well, a lot of times, if you have somebody who has even a minimal cognitive impairment and you're trying to fly them, what you're going to do is you're going to get to the airport, which can be a very stressful environment unto itself. I know every so often I'll get stressed trying to get through Chicago O'Hare in the wintertime. But you go through a stressful environment at the airport, and then you get on the airplane, and then you wind up turning right when you get on the plane, and you're walking back, and you're walking back, and you're walking back. And what grandma may see is she may just see this long tunnel constantly coming at her, and that's going to increase her anxiety. And there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of banging luggage, and there's people moving around, and then you're going to wind up sitting in an economy seat, and it can cause anybody, whether they're cognitively impaired or not, stress. So here you have somebody who may have some cognition issues, they may have some physical issues, they may have some mobility issues, and then all of a sudden you're going to put them into a claustrophobic environment, and you're going to wonder, well, why are they acting out? Why are they going to have a panic attack? And then you get into the air, and there's not as much oxygen up at 6,000 feet where cabins usually pressurized to, or 8,000 feet, and then all of a sudden they're having trouble breathing. Well, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Just sounds like a nightmare, because people are using their common sense to figure out how to navigate. Seems simple, but there's so many things that can go wrong.
Absolutely.
When your physician or RN shows up on the plane, how do they let the flight attendants know who they are and what they're doing?
One of our corporate policies is to make sure that the flight crew always know that our nurse is on board, whether they're traveling with a patient or whether they're traveling back. We consider ourselves guests on the airlines. So if we can be of any assistance to the air crew, we want to render that assistance. If we're traveling with a patient and somebody, and we're traveling with our patients in first class, again, this is to eliminate that anxiety that can cause by walking down a long metal tube. It's a lot less stressful if you're getting on the plane, turning right, and then sitting down, rather than walking back 20, 30 rows into a plane, which is one of the reasons that we transport our patients in first class. With the airline crew that we're working with, if we're sitting with our patient in first class, and somebody in the back of the plane has a medical emergency, we may want to make sure we intervene so that the flight doesn't get diverted and that our patient gets to their destination on time. And obviously without a flight delay or a flight diversion.
Sitting on a tarmac or something horrendous.
Exactly. And if we have a connecting flight, well, that can throw the whole shooting match into trouble.
Very good. And so you're taking oxygen on the plane, and so if you, being medical professionals, and you're learning the airline that you're doing that, it goes a lot smoother than if you just whip out oxygen during the flight.
One of our rules is you never want to surprise an airline or an airline crew with anything. So we always want to make sure that they know what we're doing, who we're bringing, what equipment we're bringing, and that we can be assistant to them if needed.
And so I understand that you work with clients of all ages. Give us an example of maybe a younger person that you have had to go help and get from one place to another.
We do a lot of work with the spinal cord centers of excellence around the country, transporting their spinal cord injury patients, stroke patients, traumatic brain injury patients to them. These are folks who have had recent injuries. They may have very significant mobility impairments. If you think of a high-level spinal cord injury, a quadriplegic, they have no mobility whatsoever. But yet they're going to go to one of the centers of excellence as a rehab facility, and we will be able to get them there safely and securely. We have the equipment, we have the training, we have the expertise, and the ability to get them to the facility on a commercial airline.
Okay, very good. How often is it a senior that you're working with?
I would probably say about 2/3 of our patients are seniors. About 25% of our patients are dementia patients with cognitive impairment. In many cases, our seniors have a combination of comorbidities. They have mobility impairments, they may have oxygen dependency, they may have dementia. So we're trying to navigate all of these worlds to make sure that we're taking care of all of these problems at one time. So we're going to want to make sure we address their mobility issues. We're going to make sure that we have the right equipment to get them to the airport and comfortably through the airport. We're going to want to make sure we have the right equipment as far as oxygen goes. Many of our seniors who have cognitive impairments are on a sedative. Well, sedatives and hypoxic environments don't mix very well, which is one of the reasons that we're going to want to bring oxygen equipment to make sure that they're comfortable. There are a few things that are worse than not being able to get a good breath.
Yeah.
So in many cases, we're just going to put oxygen on somebody prophylactically just to make them more comfortable. The idea is not necessarily for our nurse to respond to an emergency. The idea is for our nurse to prevent that emergency and be proactive. Keep our patient calm. Make sure they're comfortable. Make sure they enjoy the experience.
So let's say someone's going to be on a 3-hour flight. People might assume, oh, we'll just need to hire a nurse for 3 hours. But what really goes on to it that people might not necessarily think of?
There are a lot of logistics that go into a transport. When our coordinators, who are also flight nurses, are putting together a transport, they're going to make sure we're looking at all the variables that go into that transport. So we're looking into the patient's medical history. We're looking into what their mobility issues are. What other factors do they have? And then on the day of transport, our nurse is actually flying out the day before to meet with the patient. This is going to decrease the anxiety. You don't want our nurse to meet the patient for the first time at 5 o'clock in the morning when they're half asleep. The nurse meets the patient the day before. And then we're going to make sure that they comfortably get to the airport. And we're going to make sure they comfortably get through the airport. There's a lot of time spent on these flights that's not necessarily in the air. Sometimes the flight can be the shortest part of the whole operation.
Sounds like 3-hour trip is really at least 3 days, maybe more, of work behind the scenes.
A lot of what we're doing is making sure that the patient is calm, comfortable, relaxed. They're not overly stressed about the flight the next day. Many times there's a lot of anxiety about traveling. There's a lot of things going on in the senior's life. They don't know what their new place is going to be like. They're worried about leaving their home. They have a lot of anxiety, and on top of that, you put in the anxiety of the traveling. They may not have flown in 30 or 40 years. So this way, they know that not only are they flying, but they're flying with a friend. They're flying with a companion who they've had some time to get to know and to meet.
And I saw somewhere, care takes flight. What a beautiful slogan, care takes flight. And that's exactly what it is.
Yes.
So, well, very good. So now I'm going to talk to your wife for a little insight behind the scenes.
Okay.
Now we're going to meet Margaret Batchelor, who traveled with Bob to Kansas. Thank you so much for being here. And I had an opportunity to find out that not only are you privy to kind of the inner workings of Bob's business, but you've been a family caregiver yourself. And so tell us a little bit what that experience was like for you.
Sure, yeah, so certainly thanks for having us here in Kansas. It's been wonderful. I think with family caregiving, something that I like to stress as an educator, and I always go back to that Mike Tyson quote of everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face. So certainly that call, I've been through that experience of you get the call from the neighbor saying, I see an ambulance outside your mom's house. Maybe you want to check in. And that becomes the crisis that precipitates, these very crucial conversations. So I think the best advice as a Gen Xer, and there's a lot of us out there that are dealing with whether you're a caregiver now or you will soon be a caregiver, whether you intentionally know that's going to happen or not, being equipped to have those crucial conversations and planning with your family and getting senior coaches involved very early in the process will eliminate a lot of stress on your parents and yourself and the family dynamic in general.
Because it can really throw you for a loop. Like something's going on with mom, but when you get the call about the ambulance or a fall, then it starts to be more of a wake-up call.
Absolutely.
So what we know is that adult children will often wait until the 7th red flag before they take action. And then all the siblings are involved, and maybe their aunts and uncles or other people are involved. And now everybody knows it's time to do something. And so there's a lot of conflict sometimes with people wondering, well, why do we need an air ambulance, or why do we need this type of flying service, and why do we need this, and why do we need to sell the house, and all these different things. So what was your experience like making those decisions and working with your family?
Sure, yes, certainly. One of the great things my parents did is we had a cloud drive with all their paperwork and their intentions. So we really felt, myself and my sister, that we're here to manifest their intentions as best we can. So that's one great advice I would give, is to have a central portal where everybody can check. Then there's not the family dynamics of, well, mom told me at lunch 3 years ago she wanted this, and somebody else is saying, oh, I was golfing with dad last week and he said this. And then you can go back to, well, this was really their wishes, and let's do the best we can to get them somewhere safe, to fulfill their wishes, and that minimizes tensions where you're going, well, we are here to help them, and let's all move forward.
And so trying to have as much communication beforehand.
Absolutely.
And having kind of a plan B, having holistic understanding, and who's going to be involved in helping coordinate things.
Sure, and certainly, right, I'm a busy, Gen Xer, full-time job, 3 kids. This is a lot to handle on your own. So this great community that you and Bob are in, this senior care community, there's so many people willing to help, and it's really worth, don't think you can take this on by yourself. Really tap into these great resources in your community through senior coaches that can help you navigate this very complex situation while you're grieving. You're super stressed. You've never done this before. I'm not a professional caregiver. Do you try to fix your car yourself? No. So why would you think you can navigate the complexities of the long-term care system when you're an attorney or a nurse or a preschool teacher? So really relying on great experts in this community that you and Bob are involved in was really helpful for me, and that's the resources we'd like to get connected out with everyone who will, if you haven't done this yet, at some point you will be an adult caregiver.
Thank you so much for accompanying Bob and sharing your great story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here in Kansas.
And now we'll get back to our conversation with Bob. All right, now we've got some tools out, or some interesting things here. So these are some of the things that you might take on a flight. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, we have a few things here. One of my favorite devices is a pulse oximeter.
Okay.
And this is one of the most useful things that we have in our medical kit. What this allows us to do is measure the amount of oxygen.
A lot of us learned how to do that during COVID days.
There we go. And it scares me a little bit sometimes when I think about, novices using a pulse oximeter. It's a nice tool. There's a lot more that goes into it than just reading numbers. And there's a lot that a medical professional can glean from looking at it. You can tell somebody's heart rate, you can tell how well their heart is pumping, you can tell their EKG rhythm using this. So there's a lot of things that professionals can use for. But one of the useful things is how much oxygen is in their blood. And then we have our portable oxygen concentrators that we can use. And actually, when I started doing this many, many years ago, these were the size of roller boards in small suitcases.
Oh.
Now oxygen equipment comes in very easy to use packs.
Okay.
And these are battery operated. And we can bring as much battery power as we need for a flight, be it a 3-hour flight from state to state or a 36-hour flight internationally.
How do patients do with a 36-hour flight?
Well, they usually do very well. When we're transporting patients internationally, we're flying in business class, and most of the time we can put them into a lie flat seat. So it is actually very, very comfortable for them, and they get to actually sleep for a good portion of the flight.
Oh, that's good. That would make it go a lot faster. And so you're not using the wheelchairs at the airport, you brought your own?
Generally not. We have a range of specialty wheelchairs that we use. Almost all of them recline. Most people don't realize that the actual flight time, especially domestically, is a relatively small portion of the whole travel time. And most people, especially seniors, don't like to sit up in a wheelchair for extended periods of time. So we have several different types of wheelchairs that we can use so they can ride comfortably reclined to the airport, and we can transport them very comfortably through the airport.
Keeping your loved one calm.
It's about keeping them comfortable, it's about keeping them calm, and it's about keeping them in a state of well-being.
Good. So Bob, what are some of the primary requirements for someone to be able to fly commercial?
The number one requirement really is that they need to be able to physiologically tolerate sitting. We are flying people in a first-class seat on a commercial airline. Now, if you think of people who have had strokes or have had spinal cord injuries, they are able to tolerate sitting up. Even patients that have had high-level spinal cord injuries, may not have a whole lot of trunk control. We have special equipment to keep them secured and safe in the seat. But that's really one of the requirements, sitting in a seat. They don't have to be able to stand, they don't have to be able to walk, they don't have to be able to move at all, but they need to be able to tolerate sitting. If they need to lie flat during a flight domestically, they are going to need an air ambulance, a private jet configured with medical gear, configured with a stretcher that they can lie flat on. Unfortunately, there are no options for stretcher flights on the commercial airlines at this time.
Okay. And so you'd be able to assess someone and determine whether or not they would qualify to fly commercially with you, or if you need to make a referral elsewhere.
That is absolutely correct. That's one of the first steps that our flight coordinators do when we're talking to a patient, making sure that they are able to tolerate that seated position for the length of the flight.
What about when they need to get up and use the restroom? What are some of the things that you do in that case?
Well, one of the things we try to do with that is prevent it. So our patients that are immobile, we're going to want to have Foley catheters or some other type of diaper device if it's a short flight. For our patients, as far as bowel movements, we're going to want to do a bowel prep prior to the flight. Now, for short flights, that can simply be an enema the morning of the flight. Or for our longer flights, we may wind up wanting to do a full bowel cleaning. If you just think about people who've had colonoscopies, that's relatively common, but this will prevent that bowel movement during the flight.
Okay, so now it is really starting to sound more complicated, and probably not something you just send your neighbor to do or someone to do. That this is why there's a market for the specialty that you have.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Now we're going to see a demonstration on how they can take a patient into a wheelchair or into an airline seat.
So what we use a device called a comfort carrier, and this was developed by a gentleman who is a quadriplegic himself. So one of the nice things is it has some handles that we can use. So you can grab those handles, or grab the rest handle, and we're just going to pick them up. And we're going to come over here, and we're going to put them in a seat.
So Bob, what got you into this field? It's so unique.
Well, I've been a nurse now for over 30 years, and as a guy, my first 10 years in nursing were all in the typical guy nursing fields, trauma, burn, ICU, but I always wanted to be a flight nurse. As with most guys who are in nursing, we want to be flight nurses. Well, the problem is I live in Philadelphia, which is a major metropolitan area, so there's not a whole lot of opportunities for flight nurses. There's only a few helicopter programs, and there's level 1 trauma centers all over the place. Well, about 15 years ago, a friend of mine asked me to move his grandfather from Florida up to Canada, and he was just a cantankerous old cuss. And as most people who deal with seniors know, many seniors who have cognitive impairments will respond better to a caregiver than they will to a family member. So I said, sure, this sounds like a lot of fun. I'll go, happy to do it. I'm a nurse, I can do this. So I flew down to Florida, and I got to the nursing home where he was, and he was a cantankerous old cuss. He was just mean-spirited, but I was able to get him to the airport, and I was able to get him on the airplane, and I was flying in first class with him, which I thought was terrific. First time I'd ever flown first class in my life, and I'm reading Sky Mall, and I'm just having a grand old time. And halfway through the flight, he stands up, "Help, help, I'm being kidnapped, I'm being kidnapped." So I did what any nurse would do in a pinch. I just gave him a shot of sedative right through his pant leg. He sat down. I told the flight attendant, Grandpa just had a dream, and I realized this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my career. And that was 16 years ago, and here we are now with nurses and doctors all across the country.
That's amazing. So you really learned how to fine-tune it, prevent those kind of things from happening.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, thank goodness there was a nurse there to take care of him. That would have been a disaster for a family member that wouldn't have been able to explain what was going on, and you were able to calm him and settle him. And it almost seems like a real calling that you had, just a very, very clear mission, and we're so glad you're doing it.
Thank you.
This is a highly specialized field, very much a niche, and so I would imagine those of you that are in this type of work, you all know each other and refer to each other, and you're a community that helps figure out how to get things done.
The medical transport community is a small community, and to your point, yes, we all know each other, we all get along for the most part, and we all generally share resources. If somebody calls me and says, Bob, we want to transport somebody, and we evaluate them, and we say, no, this is just not safe. This is not somebody who should be flying on a commercial airline. We are happy to refer them to one of the terrific air ambulance companies around the country.
Very good. So you know what level of care
Yes.
and where to send them to somebody that's really good, really legit.
Yes.
and really has the proper licensing and credentials and all of that.
One of the things I tell people to watch out for is there are unscrupulous brokers in the medical transport industry and people who are just looking to broker a flight out to somebody else. And you really need, and just like any other industry, you just need to stay away from them.
Make sure you're dealing with the real company, the real source.
Make sure that the people who are flying with your parents work for the company that you are talking to. All of our nurses are our employees. If you're working with an air ambulance company, you want to make sure that they're the people who own the aircraft. You don't want to find somebody who's just going to farm it out to some other air ambulance company and just be the middleman. It just adds costs, and it adds a degree of uncertainty that you don't want to have.
So talk to the experts, and so I'm
Yes.
so glad that I met you and that you're now a Kansas connection for us, and we so much appreciate you coming here to be on the show.
Katherine, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for tuning in. If you have questions about this topic or anything that we cover, we sure hope to hear from you. You can reach us at 316-686-4500 or email us at empoweringseniors@kpts.org. I'm Katherine Ambrose, and I'll see you on the next Empowering Seniors.